Welcome back to 5 Acres Honey Farm. I'm Tara Lynn, and today's video is all about you and your questions. And I have been getting a lot of questions both on Instagram, and if you don't follow me on Instagram, I'll link to that below, and also in the comments here. And when folks are reaching out, I've kind of grouped questions together based on themes. So this is spanning a lot of different topics, and I'm just gonna get a drink together and we'll wander around and check on everybody, and I'll answer your questions. The first batch of questions that I'll answer is all about beekeeping. A question that I got recently is what my inspection schedule is like. While I get my tea together, I'll answer this. My inspection schedule varies seasonally, and it also varies by the condition of the hive and what's happening at that particular time of the year. So this time of the year, it's March, it's swarm season, so I might be checking a little bit more frequently this time of year than say in December, because I'm looking to see if colonies are building out swarm cells, if they are if they have enough food. So if they are building up all their brood, are they going to have enough food for all of the baby bees? And in the summer, when there's a time of dearth, looking to see if there's enough food in there for them, and just checking on all those different things. And for those who've been following for a while, you know that I have this fairly chronic issue of small hive beetles with my apiary in the mountains. And so when I go in there, I might be going in every day while I'm visiting to manually kill as many small hive beetles as possible. So there may be no other intent to check on them other than to help support them as they fight all those beetles. So I don't maintain like I must check them every week. There are certainly times when weather, life, and other things come up where it might be 2 or 3 weeks before I can get in the hive. But I typically do like to have some visual check on them, every 7 to 10 days or so on average, but like this time of the year it will be more often. And for example, I last inspected about 5 days ago, and I went out today and I didn't do full inspections. I just took a little peek in the top boxes to see how they were filling things out, and I added a box when I saw that they were already filling things out fairly quickly. So there is a risk right now, because I didn't do a full inspection, that perhaps they didn't have enough space and they're going to do a swarm cell. So that's just a risk I'm taking right now. I'm very happy that all my colonies survived winter, so I'm okay with the number of colonies that I have. I'm also comfortable because I have my swarm trap set up and I've been keeping that maintained. So that's, just kind of taking each season as it comes. The other question related to beekeeping that came up is related to how do I determine if I'm going to treat for Varroa mites, and how do I choose a Varroa mite treatment. So I may have mentioned this in other videos, but just to kind of give a quick recap, when I first started beekeeping, I was doing the sugar shakes and those sugar rolls, that's another term for them, where you use the confectionery sugar to do a little shake of about 500 bees and see how many mites per 500 bees you have, and see what kind of a ratio of mites exists in the colony. And here in North Carolina, super humid summer, so there's not as accurate of a test because the sugar's clumping a lot in the humidity, and you really can't rely on it. I feel like it was going to so much work just to get the bees, and it was just such a mess. So I decided to move into the alcohol wash method. And in that method, you are killing the bees that you are using in the sample, which I wasn't happy about, but I figured that is accurate. I'm going to do that. So that was also still the challenge of scooping everybody in and doing the wash and trying to organize everything in the apiary. And then I saw a video, and if I can find it, I'll link to it below. And the video was about one of the North Carolina state apiary inspectors posted it, and he took the sample of bees and just put it in a zip top bag and put it in the freezer. And then in the comfort of his home, he did the alcohol wash. So you don't have to be suited up and trying to fumble with everything with your gloves on. And I thought that was a great idea. So I made sure I did alcohol washes on all my colonies using that freezer method. Lo and behold, I did counts and it was fairly non-existent. I was feeling really good. I'm like, there's really no Varroa. I have nothing to worry about. And then that fall, this was a few years ago, I did an oxalic acid treatment, and I feel like the alcohol wash was just a few weeks before I did the oxalic acid treatment. So it wasn't like months and months had passed. And I stopped counting after 500, but on my IPM board, and if you're new to beekeeping, that's integrated pest management. So I have a screened bottom board and I have an IPM board underneath it. And so I counted the mites, and there were over 500 mites that dropped for, a colony of like 3 mediums or so. And that was just horrible numbers. And so I felt like I went to all that effort to collect the samples and freeze them and then do the counts, and yet still it didn't catch like these huge mite numbers in multiple colonies. So I don't really rely on that anymore. So what I'm really trying to lean into are more methods that are focused on brood breaks and giving the bees time to flourish, while at the same time removing the environment where Varroa mites are going to be breeding. So having brood breaks, encouraging swarms, splits, of course, all in that brood break cycle, and then leaning into those brood breaks to do an oxalic acid vaporization treatment, usually once or twice a year at those strategic times. I just did a video about natural beekeeping practices, and I talk about queen cages. So that's another approach where you can, put your queen in a cage. The colony knows that she's there, so they're all feeling pretty good about things, and they all stay with her. But it helps, get that environment away from where Varroa mites can breed. So trying those methods and approaches, and then last year for the first time I used Apiguard, which is the thymol-based treatment, and I really liked using that. It was really easy. It's on a larger scale. I imagine it wouldn't be really cost efficient, because I don't remember the cost right now, but I feel like it was at least $30 per hive that I was spending to treat, maybe. And so like, if I could see if you have like 20 plus hives, that could be very expensive. But if you think about replacing 20 hives, that would be even more expensive. So it might be worth investing in a treatment. But I really liked that treatment last year, and all of my colonies came through winter, so I feel like that was an approach that I would try again. Another question was if the chickens will wander, if they know that this is their home, so we can ask them. Do you guys wander away?
Ginger says they do not wander away. They pretty much stay within line of sight of the coop and within line of sight of either the back door or the basement door here. So their coop is just down there, and they really have no reason to go elsewhere because they know they're going to get treats over here. Plus, I do little like free range lessons with them. They'd sometimes just stay out under the deck over there, but when they were little, just kind of training them that this is their space. And the farthest I've seen them is one time down by the street by the mailbox, but I think they were just really exploratory that day. Otherwise, they love to just hang around. Another question was about what I plant for forage for the bees. So this is our primary like front yard space, which I've been slowly expanding to have more forage for the bees. And right now we have our first meat chickens in here. So this is there's little frogs that have been having some springtime fun in the pond. But this is the pond I put in for the bigs. Sorry, for the bees. And in this space, I have lots of herbs, peach trees, redbud, and just pretty much expanding some nectar producing plants. I have a separate video on this entire space getting seeded with crimson clover, which is something I do every year, except this past fall I didn't do that. And I'm curious to see how much comes back without having me to seed every fall. So the chickens are working their way through the space, so they might be, turning any clover seedlings they might be taking advantage of as they're coming up, but they also are fertilizing. So, but pretty much as far as the bees go, looking for cover crops like that.
Someone asked me if we butchered our pigs ourselves. So no, we did not. And I have a whole separate video about what our experience, or I should say what my experience was like raising the Idaho Pasture Pigs. And I say my experience because my husband doesn't really help out so much with the animal care, but he does help with like helping with infrastructure and things. So as far as the pigs he did, which we have a video on, he helped create a mobile solar electric fence charger for them. But like I did all the fencing myself otherwise, and he did create a little shelter for them that we got out of free materials. But otherwise, other than like if I was away or not feeling well, and he would step in to feed them for the day, but everything was all me and all a positive experience. But all the information about why we chose the processing method that we did and what the costs were is in the other video, which is linked below.
Next question is about the quail. And the question is, do we eat the eggs and the actual quail? So yes, we eat the eggs. The eggs are actually more nutritious than chicken eggs. And the quail, I always say, are the most, I wouldn't say the hardest working, but they have the most jobs out of any animal here. We do eat the quail as well, but they typically spend the winter in the high tunnel, which we'll go take a look at. This was the first winter they didn't spend in the high tunnel, but their job out there is pest management. They're fertilizing. Their bedding, as you see in here, throughout their run, I just use leaves. So I collect this and make a great compost. It's super nitrogen rich with all of their droppings on it. And yeah, they do such a great job. So usually by this time of the year is when the quail are leaving the high tunnel, but the issue I have with them in overwintering in the high tunnel is that like all of the baby carrot seedlings that are in here, they wouldn't survive. Like I would have to have multiple layers of protection around any patches of carrots, and plus like any other little seedlings they'll take advantage of. So instead, I decided to do a winter with them, not in here, and it's been really nice having the freedom of like leaving, opening up the sides on warm days where I really can't do that when they're in here because they'll get out. So the other question I got is how I learned to garden, and it's a really long answer, so I'm not going to go into all of that, but essentially books and YouTube. And I've just consumed so much information about it. And now it's pretty much my lifestyle. This is what I do all the time. And I really can't imagine back to a time when I didn't do this. And as far as like great resources, I'll share some books when I get back in the house that have really helped me. And may help you as well.
The last question that I'll leave you with was, how did I learn to garden? And I think that's a really interesting question because it really can't be answered in a brief way, but I'll try my best. And I also have a stack of books here. And I won't go through all of them, but I will link to all of them below. But a few of the books that really stand out to me, and I really can't say enough great things, and it's not particularly a how-to on gardening, but it's Barbara Kingsolver's Animal Vegetable Miracle. And reading this, it just really broke everything down, because it's done by month, so you kind of get an idea for like the seasonality of food production. So the idea with her memoir is that for a year she sourced pretty much all of her food, other than coffee and I think 1 or 2 other items, within 100 miles of her home. So seeing what she did, and I believe it was while she was living in Virginia. So I really, really love that book. And the other that I really wanted to stress, let me see where I put it. Oh, where is it? Oh, there it is. I found it. And this is a book that I credit a lot of my practices to, and I found it serendipitously around the time I was starting to get interested in gardening and being curious about it, and it's The Permaculture Garden by Graham Bell. And it goes into like super practical ways of employing ecological practices in your garden space. And then the other one, which I've talked about, and I have mentioned this before, this is actually my second copy of the book because I loved reading it so much. I was reading it outside one day and got distracted, and it ended up staying out in a rainstorm, so I have a brand new copy that I had to go in and underline all important things, but it's Food Not Lawns, and that's by H.C. Flores. And this one, it has just great illustrations on the sidebars, and just some of the content, it just seems like almost very philosophical, but at the same time it's like, oh, this is, super practical of, just employing different practices that, once you kind of read up on it a bit, it's like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Like, then they have like different illustrations of like how you could structure spaces around your house to take advantage of runoff and water filtration from natural surroundings and things. But I won't go through all those. Those are kind of like the 3 that really stand out to me. And please let me know more questions that you have. Feel free to comment here, follow me on Instagram and comment over there too, or just send me a message and ask away, and happy to answer them.